This is Brooklyn's Alright if you like saxophones, a public access enlightenment showcasing the atoms that make up the wonderful structure that is our reality. Esoteric artists, tuneful conjurers, wise scribes, and record label tastemakers get a few basic questions to let them bring you in on the who, what, how, when, but you know where, because Brooklyn's alright. Welcome to Brooklyn's Alright. I have with me artist Annette Rawlings, and we'll be speaking to her about her artwork. How are you doing, Annette?
I'm fine.
Good, good. So tell me, how did you begin, how did you get started in the creative process?
I went to Germany when I was 16 and wandered into a museum, the Heidelberg Museum, and I just loved the atmosphere of the place. I mean, it just, I don't know, it just made me feel good. So I started going back each day, and then I noticed they had a drawing class and a painting class and an art restoration class. So I signed up because I was getting interested in the paintings and how they were made and what the process was. And they also had a course at the Heidelberg University on the history of art, which I signed up for also. And there I learned how to work in a Renaissance technique where they stretch the linen and secure it with copper tacks, and then you make a rabbit skin glue to seal the linen. And I learned how to mix my own colors and the formulas that they used in the Renaissance. And so, yeah, it was very interesting. And I was going to work restoring paintings in a museum. And also, to learn about painting, they had everyone copy the old masters. And you learn the technique and how to mix the colors the way they did and how to use your brush. And then we had some drawing classes, figure drawing, because their idea was if you can draw the figure, you can draw anything.
Right.
So I just loved it. I just loved all the processes, the techniques, and I loved learning about the history of art. Then I went back to the U.S. and I was going to school at Miami-Dade College, and I was going to be a pharmacist because who can make a living
Off art, yeah.
as an artist? But I still studied art because I loved it. And then I went on to the University of Miami, and then I went back to Europe, to Italy, and studied at the School of Perugino in Perugia, like a medieval town.
Right.
And I learned how to do fresco, tempera. It was courses for masters, a master artist. They treat you like a technical school. Yeah, I mean, like you could be a plumber, an electrician. Right. You're learning a trade.
Yeah, of course.
So I learned how to do that. I learned jewelry making, Italian jewelry making. I studied Etruscan pottery, and I went to Venice and studied glass making, which I was just studying everything.
Little bit. You had your hand in a little bit of everything.
A little bit of everything. And I went on to Spain for a summer course in paper making. I studied with a very famous paper maker there.
I had read that, but I forgot about the paper maker.
Yeah, Aurelia Muñez. And she got invited to the United States with an Exxon grant, and it turned out that they needed another artist to study with her, with this Exxon grant. And I just happened to be there, the right place, the right time.
Like a break.
Yeah. So I learned all about paper making. And we all did something I did a shirt out of paper.
Really?
Yeah, I cast a shirt. It was interesting. You get a screen, like a window screen, and then you do the pulp. You know, you beat up the pulp. And I starched a real shirt, real heavy. So I laid it on the screen, and then I poured the pulp over it. And you have to be careful. If it's too thick, it's not paper anymore. If it's too thin, you have holes in it. So you have to have an idea what you're doing. And then you add a stiffener to the paper so that it'll stiffen, and then when it dries you can pop it up off the shirt. And then I use dyes to paint the shirt.
Did you actually put two pieces together and even seam it as an actual?
It was
really?
a regular shirt. Yeah.
That's really cool.
So it showed at the Metropolitan Museum in Coral Gables, along with the other artists that were part of this Exxon program. So that's how I started to become diversified from the painting, you know, to paper making, and then I evolved into pottery from what I studied in Italy, and jewelry making. This is one of my pieces, that I did. And I've kept up with it all these years. I had an art patron who was a manufacturer of clothing, women's ready-to-wear, and he loved my paintings, and he thought, well, let's do this on clothing. And I thought, why not? So we went to Burdines, and just as we were there talking to the president of Burdines in Miami, Florida, DuPont calls wanting to know if the president of Burdines could recommend any manufacturers that would work with this new product that they had, Lycra.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So
you're one of the first to work with Lycra?
Yeah, one of the very first to work with Lycra.
Interesting.
The idea was you could have a T-shirt, and I would pull the sleeve of the T-shirt and it would pop back into place. So, you know, it never lost its shape. So I flew to New York and worked with DuPont, manufacturing this ready-to-wear line with Dacron cotton and Lycra with my paintings on it. And what I did, I didn't just put them on like a square in the front of the T-shirt. I wrapped it around. So
it became the full piece on the shirt?
Yeah, that wrapped around all the way to the back. And if it was long sleeves, it wrapped over the sleeves and on around, which is called an engineered print. And from there, well, the father of the engineered print is Mr. Dino. He was very famous back in the early 50s and 60s. Actresses wore his clothing, and he saw my shirts because they were in the newspaper and in ads. They sold all over the United States. I went on a trunk tour where you're on television one day and in the department store.
For the clothing line?
Yeah, for the clothing line.
I didn't know promotional tours for clothing lines went back then.
Oh yeah. Well,
I thought it was a very new thing.
This was the early 70s when I did that. And he saw it in the newspaper and called me up, and he had started doing bathing suits. So he wanted to know, and he was the father of the engineered print. He saw I was using the engineered print in my work. So he said, you want to come and, you know, do some bathing suits? Oh, sure, you know, it sounded like fun. So you worked with a model, and back when I was in the early 70s, all the bathing suits just went straight across the leg. I raised it, you know, to fit the form. You know, as an artist, and I worked in sculpture also, even though that didn't turn out to be, you know, my main media. So I raised the leg of the bathing suit. And they were on the Paris runways, and they sold all over the world. And then once they're on the runway, then they're not your property anymore.
Right.
You know, you don't own them anymore. They're published. So a lot of people copied that.
Really?
Yeah, of course.
Well, like Matt Groening of The Simpsons says, copyright infringement is the best form of flattery.
Yes, it's true.
Now, you mentioned early on that you did art restoration. Did any of that influence your work?
Yes, because I use the same technique, even though I'm a modern painter and I use figures in my art. I use the same very old technique, and then I put a modern work on it. So I combine, the Renaissance technique with a modern painting. And I like to do that because I like the process. I'm really into different processes. And also the linen is a natural color like your skin. It's like a beige color. So, and oil is translucent. And so if you put, say, a white canvas, if you put red oil on a white canvas, you'll get a pink effect. But if you put that red oil on natural linen, which is a beige, you really get the full feeling of the red.
A lot of artists don't know that the canvas actually works just as much for a painting that paint does.
Right, it does. And I mix all my own colors, so I do the modern work, but in a very, Renaissance type method, using small brushes. 1 inch is my largest brush, and I'm working on a commission right now that's 3 foot by 6 feet in, 1 inch brush. And I have a line in my work which has always been there. And I do that freehand with a very small brush. Yeah, I don't mask anything off. And so I've still continued with everything that I was interested in. I still do the art to wear clothing, the jewelry. I just had 2 exhibits in New York and an exhibit in Paris at the Carousel du Louvre, which was very exciting.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I'm sure it was. Now, you're more well known for your paintings. Is that your favorite form of medium?
Yes.
Tell me about some of your paintings.
Well, most of them are quite large in the beginning, and they're all figures. They're my style. They're a little abstract. They're very minimal. Sometimes there's maybe 3 or 4 lines, 5 lines to create the figure, and 2 or 3 colors. And I started with a profile of the figure, and then later on the figure turned to the back because I liked the landscape feeling of the figure when it was turned away from you. And a lot of them became much more abstract.
Right.
And then they turned around. I got a commission, and I had never really done a full face. But he wanted a full face of his wife. And his wife looked like my painting, so it wasn't difficult. And so I thought, why not? This had been years after I'd been painting. Maybe 15 years ago was the first time I decided to go ahead and do a full face. And I enjoyed it. And I had a lot of fun doing it, and then I got requests, people wanting the full face. So I've done that. But now I've gone back a little more abstract. Yeah, so it kind of comes and goes.
Now, you mentioned you were schooled in jewelry casting, glasswork, and even ceramics. Do you still find that you work in those mediums?
I do. Yeah.
Tell me about some of the works that you've done lately.
In ceramics?
Yes. Actually, in any of them. Tell me some of the glasswork, ceramic, anything.
Well, I never kept with the glasswork.
Oh, really?
Even though I studied it. That's one of the few things that I didn't stay up with. But with the ceramics, I've done a large pear because I think the women's figure is kind of pear-shaped. And I've painted the figure around the pear. They work together very nicely. and I put it on a turntable so that you can turn it around. So it's a ceramic piece that has a real wood stem coming out of it.
Oh, nice.
So I like doing that. I had a bed and breakfast at one point where I did all the tablecloths, napkins, dishes, aprons, cups, saucers.
Was it printed or did you actually?
I actually hand painted them all.
Wow, really?
Yeah. And I had a shop on Lincoln Road when the Miami Arts Center was there. And in my shop gallery, I had the paintings and the clothing and the jewelry and all of that. And this woman stopped by. She had a towel and shower curtain business that sold worldwide. And she came in and she said, and I was painting, I mean, I say painting on fabric, but really save your painting on cotton.
Mm-hmm.
You have to make a cellulose solution, chemical solution, because cotton comes from a plant.
Right.
So
They don't absorb, it doesn't absorb.
it doesn't
the
absorb
paint.
and become part of the fabric. And this is what I learned when I was working with DuPont, you know, with the ready-to-wear. I had to learn how to mix the colors, and I had to take a chemistry class to, you know, be able to talk to them and tell them what I wanted, because they wanted me to tell them how to make my colors.
Right.
Because my colors weren't, you know, just found in a color book as most.
It was your own like mix.
Yes, it was my own mix. So I was doing some fabrics, and she said, can you do that on towels and shower curtains? And I said, sure, you know, I can do it. The next thing I knew, this towels and shower curtains and washcloths appeared, and I painted on them and sent them back to her, and she loved it. And so she sold these all over the world, like Harrods at London, and she had showrooms in New York and Los Angeles, and even the King of Saudi Arabia, this is back in '84, came to New York to their showroom, and they had done their towels with a lot of gold trim and silver trim and special embroidery work and things like that. And I had maybe 4 different patterns that I was working with at the time, and he picked mine out of everything. So it was great. I ended up hiring 10 of my artist friends. It was my biggest order. It was a $80,000 order, which was
A Prince ransom.
yeah, which was really great. So I've been doing that for about 10 years before I opened the bed and breakfast. The reason I opened the bed and breakfast was my daughter went off to college. So everybody teased me. It was the empty house syndrome. So I quickly filled it up. And so I hand painted, you know, all the towels, all the tablecloths, and I made all the cups and saucers and dishes, and I opened up like a little gift shop in the front with all my work in it, and it was great.
So it was like bed and breakfast, artist studio, almost.
Yeah, it was a two-story house. I had a carriage house in the back, which became my studio, and it was like live the art. You know, you really got to eat, drink, sleep, you know, with art.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I'm jealous.
Yeah.
So jealous. So you mentioned your artwork's been all over the world, but it's taken you all over the world.
Yeah.
Tell me about some of your favorite showings and gallery shows you've had.
Well, I have shown a lot in Europe, and I think one of my favorite shows was at the International Contemporary Art in Paris, because they let me put a painting on the wall, and then my ceramics became an extension of the painting.
How so?
I would take the line in the painting and maybe abstract it a little bit and put it on the ceramic piece and do it in the same color, so it was an extension. You know, it wasn't a copy of the painting. It was just an extension of the color and some of the line. And then they would let me, some of the ceramic pieces, I had handmade paper incorporated into it. They would let me put any kind of fibers or fabrics.
So tell us, what's in the future for Annette Rawlings?
Well, friends have talked me into writing a book, so I've started writing it all. I have 80 pages, and I have written before. I have a degree in art history as well, so I've been a museum director and I was a curator for a museum in France, and I've written articles about art, and I've written for newspapers.
What is the book going to be about?
About my art and the journey of an artist.
Oh, so biographical?
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah, pretty much. And so I like that. My work and my painting, I'm doing a tropical series. I'm living in Palm Beach, Florida now. And I like the colors there, and it's getting a little more abstract, which I like. And I'm experimenting with some brighter colors. And instead of using the linen, because that dulls the color down, I don't like to add white to oil because it sort of muddies it up in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm using a white canvas instead of putting white in,
Right.
so that the white comes through and kind of livens the color up a little more. So that's different for me. My jewelry line, I'm working with someone, and I'm having handmade jewelry done in Spain now. I'm using Italian leather and having it all, made by hand. And then I do the finishing touches when it comes back. I'm still working with fabrics, but I'm doing one-of-a-kind silks now. Before I was doing things for department stores, which involved, a lot of work and a lot of travel, and I enjoy doing just a few things at this point, one-of-a-kind pieces and doing commissions and that sort of thing.
Wonderful. Well, like your work, I find you to be very bright and vibrant, so I'm looking forward to whatever the future holds in store for you.
Well, thank you very much.
I'd like to thank Annette Rawlings for coming on. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's take a look at some of her work. Let's take a look at some of the bands that are making the rounds. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you out on the streets of Brooklyn.